Okay, all right. So today we'll discuss about IO systems. Okay, so in last lecture we covered two important aspects or two important methods. One is polling, and second is interrupt. Okay, today we'll study DMA, and also we'll look at how buses operate. All right. So this is what we started in the last class. So we have control path, control unit, data path, input and output, right? So this part we have discussed in great detail. Memory also we have discussed in fairly good detail, which includes cache memory, and devices we are studying now. So input and output, right? So all right. So we'll come to this diagram little later. Okay. We have seen that devices are various kinds. Some operate at very slow data rate, and some operates at very high data rate, and all of these need to be accommodated. Okay, and number of IO devices keep coming, and data rate that's required also goes on. Okay, so the processor has to do IO with the devices which are very fast. For example, if there is a, right now we are using say 50 Mbps, 100 Mbps Ethernet connection, right? It comes to my home is about 100 Mbps. But there's a 1000 Mbps links are also available, right? So 1000 Mbps data transfer has to happen. Okay, that bandwidth should be supported, right? It means that the processor must be able to handle this kind of data transfer. So requirements will keep going on, and then IO system will keep on improving in future. Okay, then we have seen the concept of polling. Polling is like, you are expecting a guest or a courier person, and you keep going out every few minutes, and then check whether person has come or not. Same thing happens in computer architecture. Where IO devices, say for example a printer or mouse, has some data to send, or a processor has to send some data to say a printer or mouse. Okay, then what will happen is that it keep polling if device is ready to accept data or device has some data to be written, right? So but this is not a good mechanism that you keep going to your door checking if courier person has come. Okay, and so, and this wastes lot of, it will waste a lot of your time or processor time. Second method is that, why not, when courier person comes, he can ring the bell, which is nothing but interrupt to you, and then you go and attend that thing, right? Now this is again very expensive, because whatever you are doing, you'll have to stop that, you'll have to go out, take the courier, and then that itself may take few minutes, right? So very expensive cycles are lost in that. And if this happens very frequently, for example, from IO device, like, say for example a network connection, then processor has to spend a lot of time, right? So we can say that significant time is wasted. Significant, it could be 10-20%, etc., or more than that, is just doing IO. All right, and this is not also desirable thing, and we have seen how interrupt works, right? When interrupt comes, it processor stops, so it has executed this section, it stops, it saves a processor state and jumps to, you know routine which handles interrupt, it services interrupt, right? When it's over, it comes back, control comes back. So the whole process is context switching and requires a lot of time, and unnecessary time is wasted just for simple transfer. Okay, so we have seen that the and this is not desirable thing. What could be better method? Better method is that, when a courier person comes, okay, he will surely interrupt. Okay, and let's assume courier person has brought in 100 packets. Uh, then so what? And you are very expensive person. I mean, you are the CEO of the company. Okay, then instead of you going and picking up those 100 parcels and putting it somewhere for use, instead of that you can ask your assistant, okay, or helper to go and collect that, and when the work is done just inform me that work is done so I can use some of that. Okay, so the exactly same way it happens in processors that whenever disk wants to transfer something to processor, the disk will send an interrupt signal. The processor knows that disk has to transfer something. It will ask a controller, which we call a DMA controller, to manage the operations. So it means that now the whole block that is to be transferred will be taken care by the DMA controller, and this DMA controller will not give it to processor but put that into memory. Note that if disk has to send something to processor, processor cannot keep it. It has to send it to memory, right? So and processor time will be wasted in getting the whole block from memory and putting it onto the RAM. So instead of that, processor can simply give direction to its helper, which is DMA controller, or disk, sometimes disk controller, which has a DMA function built in, to do this transfer. Okay, and when the transfer is over, then DMA controller will inform the processor the work is done, and it will inform the processor through interrupt. Processor knows, and processor can read the words whatever it wants. Okay, so there's the process. So the motivation, as we discussed earlier, polling is very expensive process. So interrupts are better than polling, but however, if but it requires OS to transfer one word at a time. It's okay for mouse and microphones, etc., but not good for disk and monitor, etc. And it wastes a lot of CPU time, right? And then next we studied was the interrupt, and that was also very expensive process. All right. So now we come to something called DMA, which we discussed just now. Direct memory access, it means that the IO controller, or sorry, the disk controller or DMA controller. In fact, if DMA controller is built into, sometimes DMA controller are built into IO devices or IO controller or device controller, then it can do the function. So basically, it's a transfer between IO device and memory without processor's control. Okay, and this transfer, because processor is not involved, then the transfer can be a whole block or pages. Okay, and when this work is done, then processor is interrupted. Okay, so now visually we can see it this way, that if we have non-DMA or the technology that we discussed earlier, then see if CPU has to do some transfer from disk to memory RAM, and then it has to request the controller disk. This is disk interface controller, and then it will get the data, and then it will again word by word or whatever will go to RAM. So processor is in the path of the transfer. So now let's assume block has 1,000 words and or 1024 words, and processor has to do this sequentially, right? And it's very expensive thing. So instead of that, now you know note that CPU is not here in the picture, though there is CPU has a role. CPU can ask the DMA controller, or which is in device controller maybe. Okay, I want to get data from disk to RAM, and gives all the details. Okay, so then the CPU doesn't come into picture, and this guy takes care of this transfer. and when work is done, that this guy will inform CPU that work is done. All right. Okay, any question? Any question up to this point?
No, sir.
All right. All right. Now, if you say that, if we increase the communication rate, we can see how much CPU time is used when we are using DMA versus non-DMA. Okay. And we can see that, we, as the data transfer is more and more, our block size is more, or page size is bigger, right? Then we can see significant part of CPU time goes if we are not using DMA. Right? Okay. So basically, there are two things that we do: reading and writing. These are two operations, right? So again, we are repeating. CPU tells DMA controller to read or write whatever. It gives a device, or it gives all the data, because data from where it is to be read, and data where it's to be stored in memory. Sorry, so the address is where it is stored. So all the details, say block size or whatever, or starting position and starting address and where it has to be stored. Okay, all this needs to be given. For example, starting address or memory block of data, amount of data to transfer, direction of transfer, and so on. Okay, so once CPU tells this to DMA controller, then CPU is free. It can do whatever task is doing, right? It can restart the process which has stopped. And DMA controller deals with the transfer, and at the end, DMA controller sends an interrupt that job is complete, and so on, right? So sequence is as follows. In this diagram, if you see, the CPU programs the DMA controller. It tells, programs means that it tells what is to be done, is, and there has to be some way of doing that, right? And it means the address, count, control, whatever is required is given, and then the DMA controller requests transfer to memory to device controller. Note that we are using, every device will have a device controller, like disk has a disk controller that comes as a part of standard package when you buy a disk. Okay, so disk, of course there has to be some standard. So DMA controller here we have shown separately. And so it informs the disk controller to do this transfer. And then next step is that this controller does the transfer. Okay. From where, I mean, suppose it's to be written from disk to memory, then it will do the transfer. Note that this is a main memory. Next step is what? Next step is that when this is over, this controller will know that job is over. It will send the acknowledgement to DMA controller, and DMA controller will in turn interrupt the CPU telling that the work is over. Okay, this flow is very simple. So are you able to understand what's happening? Okay, all right. So all right, so now we have here one architecture where we have a CPU, we have a bus. Note that bus is a shared bus across multiple devices. Okay, and the main memory is also here. Okay, so and DMA is, and the device controller functionality is integrated here. Okay, so DMA controller will initiate transfer like this, or vice versa, right? All right, same thing that we discussed earlier. So there are two ways: incoming data to CPU. It means the device wants to send some data, okay, to CPU. CPU has got to, of course, put that into memory, RAM. So CPU receives the interrupt from a device. CPU takes the interrupts and begins transfer. In order to begin transfer, it has to tell DMA controller to place the data at certain address in RAM. Okay, and DMA controller or device controller, whatever, handles the transfer, And then of course CPUs now can do other things, because this transfer will take huge amount of time in terms of cycles. Okay, first thing is block size can be larger, than disks are slower, and memory, and then bus should be available and all that, right? So it may take thousands of cycles till the time processor can do whatever it wants to do, and upon completion the DMA controller interrupts the CPU. That work is done. And same thing happens when we are sending, processor wants to send some data, you know to memory or disk, I'm sorry, to disk. So basically again CPU has to transfer data from main memory. Okay, because we have seen the structure, data path, and we've seen the transfer between processor to outside world is only to memory. Okay, it means that now processor is not sending data to IO device directly, right? So basically when processor has sent some data out, it has to send data from RAM. Okay, so the threads are as simple, whatever we have studied just now, right? CPU decides to initiate transfer, confirms the external device is ready to receive, right? Because it has to write something to say disk, then disk has to be ready to receive that data, right? It means it will check the status bit, and then CPU begins the transfer. So what it does is that it, in order to do that, tells its assistant or DMA controller that it start the transfer, right? Okay, from main memory to disk. That's it. So and all, it gives all the details, and DMA controller handles the transfer. Simple. All right. Any question? Basically, CPU does not want to get involved in this trivial operation, because CPU is expensive resource and can do better jobs. So instead of that, it gives this job to DMA controller, which is there as in as an entity, which then manages transfer between device and main memory. That's it. Okay, here is another view of the same thing. So this is a processor architecture. We have CPU, we have buses. Now we have, these are called system buses, or processor memory bus, and this is IO bus. Okay, and in IO bus we have USB, USB controller, where we can connect mouse and keyboard, and also some memory sticks, what you call flash memory. Okay, and then graphics adapter and disk controller, etc., right? So next step is that if you have to do reading from the disk, okay, then then processor does communication with disk controller. Okay, so this controller also has a DMA controller built in, so it is responsible for DMA function, direct memory access. Okay, so now this device here, this controller or DMA controller, gets all the details. Okay, what all to be read from the disk, and then now it's a disk controller's responsibility to do the job, right? So now disk controller will transfer this to main memory using buses. So it's like this. All right, and when job is over, it will inform the CPU the job is over. All right, so it's like this. Okay, all right, now it's informed using interrupt. Any question? No. All right, let's move ahead then. Okay, so we can see that DMA now saves a lot of time, because processor is freed up. So now we can calculate how much time it is freed up. Okay, so let's assume that each transfer, or each transfer including interrupt, takes 500 clock cycles. Okay, and this throughput is about 16 megabits per second, and DMA interrupts after transferring of 4 kilobytes. or one page. Okay, and processor running out 1 gigahertz. So we can see that, you know, we if we divide throughput with what is being done at a time in one interrupt, then we can get number of interrupts, because in one interrupt we can transfer 400, we can transfer 4 kilobytes. Okay, so basically then we have 4000 interrupts, and each interrupt takes 500 clock cycles, so we have 2m clock cycle. So now percentage of time in DMA is only 0.2%, okay, which is very small compared to what we have spent in case of polling and plain interrupt mechanism. All right. Okay. All right. So now what we have seen is that we have this controller here, which also does DMA, or we can have separate DMA processor, which is maybe connected to this controller. Totally depends on configuration. You know. Now there is a much so DMA is very simple thing, right? Very simple simple program. Okay. Instead of that, and sometimes a lot of activities need to be done by which DMA cannot handle, because DMA can handle very simple things, right? Then we can have much more complicated stuff here, or the whole processor or something that can run programs and do complicated IO. Okay, so we have IO processor, which is nothing but a heavier DMA controller that can execute instructions. So earlier we assumed DMA can do some very primitive things. Once it receives data, it can do very simple things, right? Um, okay. However, now we can do complete programming if we have IOP or IO processor here, right? Which can also do DMA and many other things like. And usually this is attached to NICs. NIC, that is required for network interface card, required for LAN, etc. Okay, all right. Okay, so that completes bit about IO. We'll not go into details how IOs are more details about IO, because it's largely what we have covered is sufficient you have to know in this course. Okay, in OS you will read more about how interrupt how processor handles interrupt. Okay, so we are not going to go into those details. Okay, another 10 minutes or 15 minutes will cover about buses, about interconnection. Like, I mean, every place we have used bus here. Okay, like here we can see there are multiple buses here. This is IO bus, and this is these are called system buses, processor memory bus, or we call it system bus. Okay, and there is also a bridge here that connects to slow IO bus. Okay, note that IO bus is slow, comparatively slow, and while main memory works at very high speed, right? So this bus has to work at a very high speed, and its design is different. Okay, all right. And this, how do you interconnect this processor and various devices and main memory, and is a big research topic, right? So there are large number of innovative ideas available, and you know simple is, of course, a single burst. Then from that we can see how what are the bottlenecks, then we go to next level, and so on and so forth. And at the end we can also have mechanism where we don't have buses, but we have direct interconnects in some way. Okay, all right, we'll not go into too much of detail, we'll restrict ourselves to very simple concepts. Okay, all right. So what are buses? See, we have processor, and processor needs to communicate to memory. It also needs to communicate with IO devices. Okay, so there's a reason in order to have this communication, and we need some way or wires where signals can go, right? So there are number of ways to do these interconnections, and simplest one is bus, and it has been used for very long time, right? And now we have various versions of buses. So a bus connects two or more devices. Okay, obviously if there is a single device, then we don't need bus, but if there are multiple devices, then we need a bus, and the devices can connect to a bus. Okay, and can send data through this bus, right? Now if this is a mechanism, then we need lot of ways such that transfer can happen, right? Sorry, we need a lot of controls in some sense, right? For example, some of things that becomes important: what is the width of this, how many parallel wires? The next thing is that, okay, who will send the data? Okay, now how what is the address size, how it is to be controlled, whose turn it is to send the data, who is master at this point, because one guy may be master, others are receivers. Okay, so who is the master? All these, and who, suppose a device has something to send, how device can get a slot when it can send? So there are large number of ways in which communication is managed, and this is where there's a some overlap with local area network that you'll study in your course. Okay, all right. So usually there are number of wires in data in buses, right? Usually, say for example, our architecture is 32-bit wide. Then in system we have 32 parallel wires that are going from one place to another. Okay, all right. Use When we say bus in general is a shared path, right? So basically, since it's shared by many, so there can be a broadcast where everyone listens and one person transmits. Okay, so if that happens, there has to be a master and there has to be slaves. Masters transmit and slaves can listen on monitor. All right, so these are basic concepts. And then traditionally there have been three kinds of buses, right? First is data bus, which carries data bits, right? For example, a processor is sending data bits to memory, say 32 bits, right? So it will carry all those 32 bits. Okay, and then there is an address bus which will carry where in memory it is to be stored, right? Those, and this bus will carry address bits. For example, in system, the memory size 2 raised power 32. Which memory location we are doing reading or writing, right? Or which word we are doing writing. So that address is communicated with address bus. And the control bus does all the control operation, like reading, writing, enabling signal, disabling signals, and all that, right? Okay, so this is the structure that looks like that. CPU is connected to memory, multiple memory modules and IO devices through these devices. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead. So we have data bus, we have studied, then we have address bus, and then we have control bus. All right. So and within a control bar there are control lines, which can give send signal for memory read, for example memory write, IO read, IO write, interrupt request, interrupt acknowledge, bus request, bus grant, clock signals, and so on. Okay, so all, see, data bus carries data signals, address bus carries address, but what are we going to do with data? Okay, all that is defined using control signals. Okay, so parameters of bus are width, how many number of wires there, like in example of risk architecture, we have bus size of 32 which can carry 32 bits. Okay, uh, however, if we increase the width, then we generally have more bandwidth. Okay, but it has to be optimized. For example, in our risk architecture, if you use 8-bit wide bus, then bandwidth is lower. Okay, make it 16 bandwidths higher, make it 32 bandwidth still higher. But if you make 64-bit bus for 32-bit architecture, it may not. Okay, uh, all right. So bus width, as we increase the bus width, in general, bandwidth goes up. Then bus transfer size is what is in one transaction, how many bytes we are transferring, right? Okay, it's kind of burst, or you can some sense, if bus is asynchronous, like in LAN, what is your packet size? In one packet, how much it carries? It's something like this. Then bus timing. Now here, note here, we are using either we use synchronous buses or asynchronous buses. What is synchronous and asynchronous here? It's different from synchronous digital circuits. In digital synchronous, whenever we say asynchronous circuit, it's a combinational circuit where you don't use clock. Okay, while note that in communication, okay, all devices that we are going to use will have to have buffer, because something that is sending has to have buffer for data which is stored and sending. Something that's receiving also has got to have buffer and has to use clock, because bits are being received by receiver, but it has to see. I mean, 0 is to be read as 0, 1 has to read as 1. So it has to have clock. So both, and so all in communication we also use clocks, right? All the devices use clock. Now the question is that, are we using the same clock? Okay, it means that clock signal goes to all devices. Okay, or clock signal is transmitted to all devices, then it means the same clock signals is used by all devices. Then we say the communication system or bus is synchronous. Okay, and if the clock used by different devices, okay, it is not the same, then we say asynchronous. Basically what happens in Ethernet, for example, right? You have, if you're okay, I will take lectures on Ethernet, but you see that there is always a preamble. Okay, from that destination, receiver can synchronize the clock. So there is a mechanism to synchronize clocks in order to read bits, right? All right. So now the problem of synchronous buses is that, see, all the bits are, for example, bus size is 8 bits, eight lines, right? So then all 8 bits will travel parallelly. What happens that there is some lines have, in some lines the delay is more than others. It means that all 8 bits will not reach on time. Okay, it depends on the characteristic of a line, capacitance and inductance, etc. So the question now is that, how can we do it always? Answer is no. So there is a lot of limitations, right? That is the reason that most of the buses that are in most of designs nowadays, the buses are usually has single line. Okay, but processor memory bus uses multiple bit transfer at a time because it requires very high bandwidth. Hence, it is properly designed and hence it is synchronous in nature. Otherwise, it's asynchronous. The LAN, for example, that you use is asynchronous in nature, right? Now, one bit is transmitted at a time, but how fast you can transmit consecutive bits, that defines the bandwidth. Any question? Okay, are you able to understand? Advait,
Yes, sir.
you are connected with two devices.
Yes, sir. My laptop's mic is not working.
Okay, all right. All right. So buses can also be multiplex. It means that so instead of having three different buses, one for data, other for address, third for control. Now we can have single bus which can carry both data and address. So we have to share it. All right. So that's called multiplex buses, where address and data has to share the same lines. And there's something called bus arbitration, means that bus is a common resource that is to be arbitrated or or shared in managed way across multiple devices. That's called arbitration. So there can be distributed arbitration, which means that each device has some understanding or some protocol to share the device, as it happens in case of Ethernet. Okay, or there has to be a centralized mechanism. Will say now it's your turn, you transmit for a certain period of time, then next person's turns and next person turns and so on. So it can be done in both ways, right? So we are not going to get into details of those designs. So basically what we see is that bus will have is nothing but bunch of wires. Then we need to do timing and signaling specification, and there has got to be protocol between and the entities about sending, receiving, and so on. All right. So let's look at number of ways we can connect devices. Now what we see here is a processor. This also is processor. For example, we are using two processor, for example. And then we have a common bus here. It's called unified memory and IO interconnect. So it's connecting to monitor, and it's connecting to this, sorry, it's connecting to memory. It's connecting to monitor or display. It's connecting to disk. It's connecting to keyboard, and also connecting to a network. Of course, you can connect to a mouse also. Okay. So this is very simple bus. What's the issue with this one? Anyone can tell me? If you use this structure, there are some problems. Okay, so it's like this, that on a road you have Ferrari and you have bullock carts also. You have trucks, you have bicycles. What is the issue then? And bus width is, road width is limited. It can carry one vehicle. So if bullock cart
Sir,
is in front, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
yes, sir. Like we could have a clear road, but a bullock cart could be in front of a Ferrari. So like
Yes.
they.
So exactly here, what happens is that if there is a mouse that communicates at slow speed, the bus has to be designed for that. It means that now all devices need to slow down. Okay, so alternatively, let's assume there is a very heavy load on display. It may consume all the bandwidth. Okay, and then there may not be enough bandwidth available, right? So it means that when bus is shared among devices which are of different speeds, okay, or different bandwidth requirements, then there may be bottleneck. Okay, all right. And also there is an important thing is that if we are putting multiple devices here, then bus has to be long. That's first thing, right? And because of long buses, there has to be you know there may be problem in coordination of the bus, like I mean bus queues there, right? Or it means that if you are using synchronous bus, signals may come to different devices at different point in time, right? Because as length of the wire increases, signals are degraded, because not all wires will be of exactly same quality. Okay, okay. And then of course device speed, that bus can't transmit data faster than the slowest device. Okay, so these are the problem. Okay, so what is the next design? Next design is that we can have more intelligent IO controllers here, as we studied earlier, right? Discussed earlier, rather than directly connecting device. In this earlier case, we have directly connected device, right? Now IO controller can manage, for example, if something is to be transferred with a keyboard, it can do more intelligent operations, right? It can store the data for some time and then interrupt the processor, etc., right? So this is slightly better design because their devices were directly connected and CPUs were transmitting to these directly. We have now IO controllers. Okay, so IO devices are decoupled from interconnect, so it can do some better operations. So next thing is that, of course, this is the one. Okay, next thing is that we can separate it out, two different buses, right? So basically we can have, see, processor memory bandwidth requirement is very high. Okay, so we can have high performance interconnect here, and then there's a memory controller and memory, and then similarly display requires, nowadays new displays that we have requires a lot of bandwidth. Okay, so we can put these two on a high performance interconnect, and then we connect this through bridge, and then we have low performance interconnect. So all these devices may not require that kind of bandwidth. Okay, and there's a bridge in between. This may also not be great design, because if you see the network here may also requires high bandwidth. Okay, so now we can continually improve the designs. For example, we can have a design something like this. Okay, we have CPU here. Okay, and then we have memory here. Okay, and then we have high speed bus here. Okay, which is called memory bus. On to that we can also connect to display, and then we have IO bus bridge. Okay, and then we can have two buses here, fast IO bus and slow IO bus. Slow IO bus will have like keyboard or mouse, which does not have high data rate, and the fast IO bus we can have, say, NIC network interface cards and some other devices which take comparatively higher bandwidth. Okay, or like disk drives and Ethernet. So this can be Ethernet, this can be disk drive. Well, this can be mouse and keyboard. All right. And then we go to much better design, right? We say that let's have a crossbar switch, which any of these can connect to any one of these, and there is and connections can be made something in parallel, like it can be like this in first instance, or if it means that there are three parallel paths. Okay, and some second instance it could be something like A is connected to E, D is connected to C, B is connected to F. So crossbar provides this one-to-one mapping in any way, right? I mean, all permutations are possible. All right. So we can have the crossbar, and multiprocessor architectures in general uses crossbars or multi-stage interconnection, that means. Of course, we will not discuss these here. So there are large number of ways in which processor can connect to IO devices and also to memory. Okay, and as number of processor goes up and number of memory modules goes up, then bus architecture becomes more complicated. Okay, so these are some of the PCI bus is something that we use in our desktop or laptops, right? And we can see there are, again we can see there is a system bus which is called front size bus, or processor memory bus also is called sometimes, right? So it's actually very fast synchronous bus. Okay, and there is a bridge, and that connects to PCI bus. Okay, which connects to PCI device like keyboard, mouse, flash drive, uh, disk, etc. All right. So these are different bus example, PCI and PCIe. PCIe is latest one, and then USB bus, SCSI bus, etc. So please go through it if you are interested, if you have time. Note that the width of USB bus is 1. That's interesting, right? It means that USB bus uses 1 bit at a time. Okay. It's ARM smartphone architecture, something like this, and you can see there is an interconnect here. Well, I mean, we need to dig through to find out what kind of bus it is, but this one architecture. This is another one where we can see the buses. Okay, this is Intel Ivy Bridge server chip IO. Okay, all right. So that's all about today's talk. We have seen that IO is very important activity, and processor does IO with devices. Otherwise, functionality of computer is very limited. IO devices come in various flavors. Okay, some act at very high speed, some require very low bandwidth or slow speed. Okay, for example, memory requires very high bandwidth. So, so the bus design has to be such that processor should be able to communicate with these devices, and it should be very efficient. Okay, and then buses are used to communicate between processor and devices and memory, and this needs to be okay. The buses are of usually two types: synchronous buses, asynchronous buses. Synchronous buses requires same clock signal is used at all devices. Asynchronous buses, same clock is not used. It means that clock signal is not sent through bus. All right, and buses are of three types. Again, data bus, address bus, and control buses. Okay, and we have seen various ways the bus can be architected or interconnected. And we have seen where we use simplest is where we use single bus. Then we have seen that we can use multiple buses and so on, right? We have not here studied bus arbitration mechanism, so I will leave it to you. If you are interested, please go through it. Like there's something called daisy chaining and some other mechanisms, right? We'll not go into that discussion because we don't have time left out. Okay, any question?
So, like, what happens if like the CPU tries to access some data or some instruction is accessing a memory location which is being written to through the DMA? Because DMA might take several hundred cycles, right? So
Yeah, so it has to wait. So it will context switch. The OS will context switch and something else will be done there. Whenever there is IO, you'll see that context switching happens. because CPU has to wait thousands of cycles, right? Maybe 10,000 cycles or even more, even to read a single word. Best case is that it gets whatever is required from, cache. That's the reason we create a memory hierarchy. If it's not there, it has to finally go to disk. It means that page is to be swapped from, swap space to main memory. Then it has to wait significant amount of time in terms of number of cycles. Okay. So that's the reason, the whole performance tuning becomes very important, very, very important. I mean, a lot of research happens in this area, because processor can work at whatever speeds, right? The speeds are going up, number of processors are also going up. You have 8 core, 16 core, it means 16 processors. Then you have different kind of memory structures, right? I mean, different memory, L1, L2, L3 with one processor, sometimes multiple processor using common separate L1, L2 and so on. And also then they all need to be connected to IO devices, right? A lot of issues may come, right? When one processor is trying to write into one IO device, second processor may also want. So there has to be mechanisms, to manage all this. So what we have touched in this course is very basic concept of computers, right? Okay, and there's a lot more. So there are possibly, I don't know, we don't have advanced computer architecture course, but advanced computer architecture course looks at some of the issues that comes to our mind now reading this one, right? How do you further improve the performance? What is the performance of a computer? How do you fine tune it? How do you fine tune memories with respect to processors? All these things becomes very complex and interesting too. Okay, any other question?
Sir, could you once repeat the difference between synchronous and asynchronous?
Pardon?
Sir, could you repeat that difference between synchronous and asynchronous?
Synchronous and asynchronous.
Yes, bus. Synchronous bus and asynchronous. Could you repeat that?
Synchronous and asynchronous. So what synchronous buses use, basically same clock signal is used by all devices. Like for example, memory and processor use the same. So it means the same clock signal goes to memory. Now this clock signal may go as part of the bus, or usually goes as part of control bus. A control line, a clock line is there, right? So now the way we have done transfer in processor, I mean, when we study data path, that's nothing but synchronous operation happening everywhere, right? When what is to be done. Okay, so when we are not doing that, and think of now network, okay, then we have to have some way of handshaking, or there has to be a protocol, right? Okay, because and main difference is, of course, is that we are not sharing the clock from processor to device. Okay, so both will have their own clock generation, but they need to be synchronized, right? Or they need to be synchronized. So then we need some protocols. So if you're interested more knowing about it, read physical layer part of networking. Or when we say, for example, when you study frame structure, you will see some of these concepts. But trend today is to use more asynchronous buses, not synchronous buses. Okay, because it simplifies everything. See, parallelism can happen. For example, we can have in a fiber, we can send multiple light rays. But these are not really, it's not that one light ray will contain the one bit of a byte, second ray will contain second bit, and third. Now it becomes impossible to handle that at a long distance. Okay, so usually communication is you 1 bit at a time of a byte, or if there are 100 bytes, then just think of first bit will go second, third, fourth, and second byte will start after that, and so on. That's it. That's all happens in networking. Only if you have to do communication between processor and memory and very controlled way, you can use synchronous communication. Okay. Okay, any other question?
Like, so this might be a bit out of context.
Pardon?
This might be a bit out of context, but sir, you said USB has only like 1 bit a time, right? But it
Yeah.
has like connection,
Okay.
connect contacts, right? So
Uh-huh.
so like what could they be like?
That's the design, right? What is the issue in that?
No, sir, like 1 bit at a time means I just need one contact probably, right?
One contact. Well, I mean, so your Ethernet also does 1 bit at a time. You know, the cable that goes out from Ethernet is 1 bit at a time. Okay, but how fast you can send over that? I can send trillion bits per second. I mean, we have Ethernet speed of 100 Mbps per second. Each port is 100 Mbps per second, let's assume, in a switch. And there can be hundreds of some such ports, right? So look at the aggregate speed that goes at the back end, right? So it can be very high, but most of the communication that happens in the world is 1 bit at a time. How fast you can keep these bits is defines the bandwidth, right? Whether the width of bit is smaller or larger, and what is the gap between bits, that all defines the speed in networking. Okay, or asynchronous system. Now you don't have those kind of controls like in synchronous, because you can define in a leading edge of the clock do this, and reading can be done and writing can be done. Then you have to have different protocols, or some ways for starting operations and stopping operation as well, right? So answer your question again, uh, whether we are sending multiple bits or single bit, it totally depends on if given a choice that you can send say 8 or 32 bits together without any difficulty, it's much better way, but you cannot design that because of the properties that we have seen. Signals cannot be synchronized to that extent that can travel any distance without any difficulty. Okay. Okay, any other question? All right, so this is all about the course. In the next class, we will summarize what you have done in the course, and then you may have some questions about exams and so on. So please come prepared with whatever you may want to ask. Okay. And if you guys want more lectures in the next week, please let me know. But I can see that you guys are tired. Only 26 out of whatever number, 55 or something, are present today. It means that not even 50% are available, right? So I don't want to teach something where people are not ready to not available. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Bye.